What's up, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well today. And in this video, we're going to be dealing with a little bit of the fallout from yesterday's bad news concerning one Uchenna Nwosu, who it looks like will miss the rest of the season due to a pectoral injury. So, worst case scenario has indeed transpired there. And the question is, how are the Seahawks going to deal with it? There are a few different ways in which they could try to mitigate the loss of one of their best defensive players. And I want to talk about one of them in this video. Obviously, first of all, the there is a distinct possibility that we just say, okay, Maffei's getting bumped up, Taylor's getting bumped up, Hall's getting bumped up, and then we're promoting one of our practice squad guys to the active roster for the rest of the season, and that'll just have to be good enough, right? So it would be Maffei, Taylor, Hall, and either Tyreek Smith, who did have a pretty good preseason and played a little bit earlier this year, or Levi Bell, who had a really good preseason. So that's possible. We could end up just saying we're just going to need the guys we have to step up. It is what it is. It's too bad. Obviously, Nwosu is a huge loss, but we're going to try to replace him in house. And I don't necessarily dread that because it would be interesting to see what some of these young guys have. A lot of people love Levi Bell, and Tyreek Smith is a guy we spent a pick on, so we must like him somewhat. And he did make some plays in the preseason, but there's another way to address this issue, and I want to talk a little bit about the possibility of us bringing in a veteran, somebody from outside the organization. Some of these guys we have a little bit of a history with, but bringing in somebody from free agency. So we're not talking about a trade yet, although we'll probably at least explore the possibility in the coming days. But let's talk about the cheap options. You don't have to give up a player or a draft pick, you just have to give up a little bit of money. And I do mean probably just a little bit of money. I don't think any of these guys are going to be trying to get a massive amount of money to go play for you because at this point they're running out of time. Either they sign somewhere or they're just not going to play this year. Or I guess they're just waiting for the playoffs to happen, but don't you want to play a little bit in the regular season too? Don't you want to earn some money there? So, I took a look at the list of currently available edge rushers on Spotrac, and there are a few names that catch my attention. No, not Chandler Jones. So get that goofiness out of here if you're thinking about talking about Chandler Jones. But there are some guys here who I think could be better than what we have. We're going to bring it back to Frank Clark to start. Where else would we start? Because obviously, this is going to be one of the top guys that people at least discuss. Frank Clark played fairly well for the Chiefs the last several years. Not anything over the top, but pretty decent edge rusher for them. He signed with Denver and played a tiny bit, and it didn't work out, and he was released. He even gave back some money to secure his release. The issue with Frank Clark is, like I said, he has really only played in 4-3 defenses, and Denver, which ran a 3-4, I mean, that's probably part of the reason why it didn't work very well there. Now we're running a modified 3-4 where it's like a 4-3 except the edge rushers stand up. So can Frank Clark do that, or would we allow him to get down into a 3-point stance and play the way he's used to? There are some questions here, but Frank Clark is a guy who is only 30 years old. He definitely has something left. This is a guy who's made some big plays. He's been a Seahawk before, obviously. This is a guy who's had a lot of postseason success. In fact, he is one of the most prolific edge rushers in NFL postseason history. And it's hard to imagine him not being better than what you could get out of Tyreek Smith or Levi Bell if he can play in this defense. Next guy would be Robert Quinn. This guy is still available as well. He's been on many different teams in his career, and he's not far removed from probably the best year of his career back in 2021 when he made the Pro Bowl and second team All Pro as a 31-year-old on the Chicago Bears. Now, last year, he was not good. He did not have a big impact on the league that year. He played in 13 games and had all of 1 sack and 10 tackles. So something happened that made him just fall off the cliff pretty much immediately. But when this guy was having great success for the Bears in 2021, it was a 3-4 defense, so he does have some familiarity playing standing up. And when he was much younger, he was playing on those Jeff Fisher Rams teams that did typically have him in a more defensive line 3-point stance role. So he's got success in both both aspects of football, I guess you could say, both aspects of being an edge rusher. So Robert Quinn, I don't know if he has anything left. He's already 33 and a half. This might just be a guy who just ran out of gas last year, but probably worth kicking the tires on. It's at least worth a discussion, right? Next guy would be Melvin Ingram, and this one's probably going to be very interesting for some people because even though this guy is old, he's older than Robert Quinn. He was effective last year for the Dolphins. He had 6 sacks, and he's a guy who's known for being somebody who aged fairly well down the stretch of his career. So I think this one is there's going to be some steam behind the idea of getting Melvin Ingram. He's got familiarity in 3-4 defenses. He was with Miami last year, and they run a 3-4 defense. I know he was playing with Nwosu in the LA, not San Diego, but LA. So we know he can do some of that stuff. So he can do 4-3 and 3-4 stuff. So however you look at our defense right now, Melvin Ingram can probably fit in. Um, I would definitely be interested in at least taking a look here and seeing if at 34 and a half years old he has anything left. Next guy would be Carlos Dunlap, and this one's kind of tough because this is another guy who is a 4-3 edge. He has always been a 4-3 edge in Cincinnati. We tried him in the outside linebacker role in Seattle a little bit, and we felt like it didn't really work because we moved on from him, even though we still had to pay him a significant amount of money because we just felt like he wasn't really going to fit that well. So he went to Kansas City last year playing defensive end and played all right. But he finds himself without a team right now. He's 34 years old, well removed from his best years. But it seems like, unless he's hit the Robert Quinn cliff, he's probably got at least a little something left. And being able to sit out the offseason and sit out the first month and a half of the year has probably allowed his body to heal. Of course, you have to wonder if he's how much he's keeping himself in shape, but that's the case with most of these guys, if we're being honest, right? Like, of the guys we're looking at in this video, the only one who I have any degree of confidence is in football shape would probably be Frank Clark, right? So, if you feel like Dunlap is able to transition his game to our defense, where we're running this weird hybrid of a 4-3 and a 3-4, then I think Dunlap would work pretty well. He's going to turn 35 after the season, so age is a factor, but seems like he's got something left. I think that's a reasonable bet. You've got Anthony Barr, and this one's interesting. So, Anthony Barr, former top 10 pick, still 31 years old. Age is not a huge factor yet. Anthony Barr has spent his career as an outside linebacker in 4-3 defenses, but you take a look at it, pretty much every season he spends, I would say, roughly 100 snaps for a full season playing on the defensive line. So could you bring him in and say, you're going to be playing on the defensive line full time? He's never been a big sack guy, really. His career high in sacks was 2014, his rookie year, with 4. So it's not like this guy is a Micah Parsons, but he's a linebacker who plays on the defensive line, the edge rusher role, I'd say a handful of times each game. Sometimes he does it a lot, but overall, on average per year, he does it, you can probably say 7, 8 to 9 times a game. Could you say that's all you're going to do here, so go out there and go crazy for those handful of snaps you get? Maybe. Maybe. I've always liked Anthony Barr. I've always been intrigued by him. And if you feel like he could make that transition to playing with his hand in the dirt full time, or, well, maybe more accurate would be to say rushing the passer off the edge full time, Anthony Barr is interesting. Another guy would be Jason Pierre-Paul, turning 35 at the start of the 2024 year. So age is definitely a factor here. But he's had success in a 3-4 defense before. That's the role he played largely in Tampa. He had a good amount of success for Tampa. Last year he was a Raven and was actually playing decently for them. Nothing crazy, nothing over the top, but he was a good, useful player for that Baltimore defense. Probably still has a little something left. He's somebody who's been dangling around the league for a long time despite only having the one hand. He's been successful in this league despite playing with one hand, so I'm not worried about that part of it. That's been a handicap he's overcome for years. So maybe Jason Pierre-Paul is the solution to the problem. Final guy I want to bring up here would be Alton Robinson because he was here in the off season. We just couldn't make room for him on the Ultimate 53 man, and we ended up letting him go. He's not even on the practice squad, but decent chance he's still in good shape. And he was trying to rejigger his game to fit in the defense. Now the issue is he didn't play football last year, so he's probably got a lot of rust to knock off, even though he was trying to make the team this offseason. But Alton Robinson is a guy who flashed as a rookie, and then it just something happened. He just fell off a cliff. Things really weren't working that well that second year he played here. It seemed like he didn't necessarily fit the defense great, but I do know he was trying to slim up so he could fit it better. If that actually happened and we just let him go because we liked Tyreek Smith a little bit more, now is not a bad time to say, hey, let's bump up Tyreek Smith to the active roster, but let's bring Alton onto the practice squad so he can chill out in case we end up needing him because another injury happens or Tyreek Smith doesn't pan out. So those are the guys that stand out to me as free agents the Seahawks could bring in. None of them would be over the top great, but there's probably at least one guy in that list I made who would be serviceable and good and make this edge crop better than it would be if we just bump up somebody off the practice squad. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I missed somebody. It's a long list. A lot of these guys wouldn't make sense, but some of the ones I didn't mention would. So there's probably somebody else here who would work just fine. So let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Go Hawks.